down the hammer and pick up the pencil. You're about to listen to the Savvy Radio Show. Learn from real-life real estate investors, experience revealed with the Savvy Landlord as your host.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to a very bonus, amazing session. I have hyped up this man for so long because he has a favorite saying that I love that rings in my ear all the time. Winners take action. And I met Jason G, man, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? I'm not really sure how long ago, but you were, in the 5 years ago? Yeah, I mean, I worked, anyway, I would do a lot of printing. I was a promoter at the time, doing a lot of events for a bridal show.
Okay.
And,
we are going to get cleaned up. Let's take our shoes off.
And I liked him, and then he gave me some amazing advice. Have you thought about using this print broker? And Jason doesn't know this, but that's pretty much the nail that hit the coffin where I became a print broker for a while. And Jason encouraged me to resell printing. And anyway, that's how I met Jason. And then through that process, I saw him grow as a human being, and then also just tap out as a sales job and maximize his gifts and talents there. So anyway, one day he calls me up and he's like, hey, I want to quit my job. I'm like, what? And I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. And he got a free car, got an office, cell phone, MacBook, and his relatives owned it. And I just remember just the animosity from everyone around him saying, you're never going to be successful. Why would you give up this awesome job to do something that he never wanted to do real estate? And so Jason and I, we just started hanging out, and we learned DISC together, or I used it for a while and then shared it with him, and it changed his life. He went from the first year, made the same income, then almost over doubled your second year. And then the third year, you like tripled your income or quadrupled your income. And when I would call Jason, I was like, man, what is your success? I would check in with him every 6 months. I'm like, Jason, how are you doing? And he's like, I'm not doing so good today. I talked to a D. I couldn't handle this D properly. I screwed up. And he would have these cards. He laminated these cards, and I've never met anyone so committed and to success and personal development to this day, where he just takes it super serious. I hear people that want to be successful, and they think that it's impossible. And this guy had no car, no real estate license, no cell phone. His dad had to give him a car, which was a very humbling experience. And then to see where he's at today is just an honor to have you on. I'm telling you guys, this dude is like super legit. And so my goal for you today, Jason, is just to tell your story. I'm looking up my itinerary that I sent you, so we're all on the same page here. So 10 minutes on who you are, your story, and then 15 minutes on how'd you do it? Like, how'd you come from just replacing your income and then taking the leapfrog effect? I think a lot of these men and women on here would love to know that. And then, you recruit people for your real estate business, and then 15 minutes on that, and then maybe 20 minutes or 15 minutes on Q&A, and we want to be sensitive to your time. So anyway, I'm honored to say that Jason Gredelution is my friend. We hung out yesterday, and it just 30 minutes was not enough time. I can spend a lot of time with Jason, and I'm honored to just share him with you guys, to my group, and hopefully that you would become friends with Jason. He's a very humble person, and he's a coaching type person, and he assists. He's been coached before. He knows how to coach people. I believe he's an asset to the community of Oklahoma and Edmond. So please welcome Jason G.
Hey, thanks, man. Does everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Coming through? All right. So I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for Steven, first of all, because we started meeting early on when I was working for the print company. And you looked at me one day and you said, Jason, nobody cares about you. And I was like, what the heck? Nobody cares about me? And you're like, don't get me wrong, you're a great guy, but you walk in a restaurant and you think everybody's looking at you, thinking about you. They're too busy thinking about themselves. And that really struck a chord. I still think about that. When I get so caught up in my head and I'm making stories about what people think about me and who I am and how I'm going to come across, and I want to pull my head into my shell, I think nobody cares about me. It doesn't matter. Just do what you love and do what you want to do. But that made a difference in my life. So Steven's right. I went in cold turkey, just into real estate. I didn't have but enough probably to live on for a year. I refinanced my house, took out $28,000. I thought, okay, if I have 4 kids at home and a wife, and I had a mentor who was mentoring me at the time, super successful millionaire, entrepreneur, and he agreed to mentor me for free. And he's the reason I have my real estate license. But to stay on topic here, my story, who I am, real estate agent, 4 kids at home. I've got a wife at home who loves me. I do pretty much what I want every day because I've got that flexibility. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for burning all of my ships. And like I said, I found a mentor early because I was listening to Jim Rohn. And he said I needed to find a mentor. Jim Rohn did in a lot of his books. He says, find a mentor. Listening to Zig Ziglar, find a mentor. Listening to Brian Tracy, find a mentor. So Steven had already been mentoring me. I found another mentor by the name of Tom Pace. He has a great book called The Kid and the CEO. If you haven't read it, it's a great book. And he started mentoring me. And he said, one day I sat down with Tom. I was there every Wednesday morning at 6:30 at Panera. And at first there were about 10 of us that would show up because he wanted to mentor people. And it got down to 5 people. I'd show up every Wednesday, 6:30. It got down to 2 people. Then it got down to just me and Tom. Other people weren't showing up. I'd show up, Tom wouldn't be there. I'd show up the next week, he'd show up. I was there. Every Wednesday at 6:30, I wasn't letting go. And he would ask me, he'd say, Jason, what are you passionate about? And I didn't know. I didn't know what to tell him. I'd be like, I don't know. He'd bring successful people to the meeting. He'd bring super successful entrepreneurs. He'd bring senators, governors, super successful people to our meetings. And they'd all ask me, Jason, what are you passionate about? And I'd say, I don't know. And then one day Tom said, maybe you should get into real estate. And he said, you'd be good at that. So I looked into it, low barrier of entry, extremely low barrier of entry. And so I thought, I can do this. So I got my real estate license. And through that process, Tom had been telling me how he went all in, just cash and all shit. He went all into what he was doing and he was successful. And he said, Jason, you need to go all in. We were sitting there one day after I had a conversation with my wife about what we're going to do. We could refinance the house. We were kind of speculating, and I met with Tom, and he said, Jason, you need to burn your ships. I said, what are you talking about, burn my ships? He said, back in the old days, they'd invade a country by boat, and they would offload all the soldiers, and they'd have to capture the enemy, and they set their ships on fire. And they'd have to capture the enemy ships in order to get home. And that inspired them. It also intimidated the enemy. And so that really struck a chord. So I talked to my wife. We came up with a plan. I was going to refinance the house, take out $28,000 is all the equity we had. And I had been working at the family print shop for over 16 years. And so it wasn't an easy decision. And I had met with Tom. He gave me some encouragement. I didn't tell him what I was doing. And I think I was listening to, maybe it was Jim Rohn, on the way to meet with a broker, and I was being convicted about going all in. I met with a broker. He told me, tell me about your finances. I said, well, I don't really have anything in the bank. I can refinance my house. And he said, well, how are you making money? So I said, I'm selling printing, and I'm also going to sell real estate. He goes, well, you're not really doing anybody any favors. You have your feet in both sides of the fence. He goes, you just need to go all in. You need to burn your bridges. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, it's a military term. And I thought about what Tom told me, burn your ships. And that was my confirmation that I needed. I got on the phone after leaving that meeting, and I called my wife. I said, hey, we're doing it. And she said, what are we doing? I said, I'm going to quit my job, and we're going all in. And I could hear her flicking the Zippo in the background, figuratively, you know, she's burning the ships and the bridges, and she was all in right behind me. So I sat down with my brother-in-law after refinancing my house, came up with a plan, sat down with my brother-in-law at the print shop, and I said, I'm leaving. And I've been there for 16 years. I was the most profitable sales rep they had, and it was going to hurt them. I wasn't doing it to hurt them. I was doing it for what was good for my family. I was making $50,000 a year. I had a company car. I had a company gas card. I had a company phone. I had literally the golden handcuffs. And I was telling my brother-in-law, I am leaving. He said, what do you need? I need $70,000 a year right now. He goes, well, we can do that. It's just going to take a few years. I said, sorry, I'm going. He said, well, he looked me in the eye and he said, in 1 year, you're going to be broke. You're going to be depressed, and you're going to be overweight, and you're going to fail. And I said, that's when I knew I'm doing it. And so I did it. I took the leap. And I remember sitting down with my mentor the very next Wednesday. I sat down with him. He had his assistant with him, Justin Barnes, great guy. Sat down with Tom and Justin, and they looked at me. I said, I did it. They said, you did what? I said, I quit my job. and he said, you did what? I said, yeah, I quit my job. I refinanced the house. He goes, Jason, that was just supposed to supplement your income by $10,000 to $20,000 a year. You weren't supposed to quit your job. I said, you said go all in. I'm all in. I quit my job. I'm done. And I did it. And about the 6 to 8 month mark, when I was just about out of cash, it lit a fire under me because I had 4 kids and a wife at home I had to support. And that's what made the difference for me, because my back was up against the wall and I had to trust myself. First of all, I had to trust my mentors telling me that I could do it. Then I had to trust myself to get it done. And that's what I learned through the whole thing. That I like to say, what's going to happen if you stop breathing? A lot of people say, well, you'll die. No. You'll pass out and you'll start breathing again, because your body's going to take over for you. And that's what we have to do for ourselves. I had to do for myself. I had to trust that I could do it when my back was up against the wall. And that's where a lot of my fear came from. I wasn't capable. I don't have enough knowledge. I don't have enough this. A lot of you are a lot of detailed people. There's never enough information. A lot of people who are relationship people, there's not enough relationships. There's always something that we're afraid of. And so by listening to the people and trusting the people that I put into my life telling me I could do it, I did it. So here I am. How did I make money? I went into real estate. They gave me a coach right off the bat. And so my coach, she seemed real knowledgeable. She was caring, thoughtful, considerate, exactly what I needed. I needed her in my life. And I came up with an experiment for myself, because that's what I needed to do. I needed to play a trick on my mind. Otherwise, I was going to get too afraid. I'm going to just do whatever she tells me to do, and we'll see if it works. If it doesn't work, then I can go back and sell printing. Big deal. So that was my experiment. And from day one, I did what she said, and I probably did it at 60%. In my first year, I made $75,000. I think Stephen had 50 in there, but it was $75,000 my first year. It was in the 120s my second year. By year 3, I was probably pushing 300,000, then up to 450, and it was really a blessing and fun to watch. But I did what my coach told me to do. I wore out probably 3 or 4 pairs of shoes door knocking because she told me to go and knock on doors my first year. But when it comes to DISC, what really helped me about my career, she said, you need to understand people. And they gave us a DISC assessment. If everybody's familiar with it, DISC. And what I found was that there's 4 basic personality types, because I started studying and I found out who I was. And I come across, if you don't know me, I'm kind of introverted and shy, and I'm processing the information, come across as a C. I talk to people and feel things. You know, the people that I know probably come across as an S. But then again, I've been practicing DISC. My first 2 years in real estate, I spent 30 minutes a day to 45 minutes a day, 5 days a week, practicing DISC, practicing scenarios. I would work on objections. When people would have objections for me, I would work on how to handle those objections, and I practiced it in all the different personalities, the 4 DISC personalities. So I became really fluent. 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week for 2 years, solid, and I don't think I missed a day. And that made a difference in my business, because I could sit down and I could understand somebody right off the bat, and I could change who I was to them, and not being disingenuous, but they could relate, and then they felt comfortable, and they felt they could trust me, and then I could open up to who I was. They would see who I was. I like to say river runs deep, because there's a lot in there, but what they see, they've got to be able to relate to, and that's where DISC comes in, and that's what's really helped me. So by doing that, I think I recruited probably 8 people my first year into my downline in real estate. Just building that rapport. Also selling, I think it was 28 houses my first year. Had a lot to do with that DISC. So understanding people, that was probably the biggest contributor, and showing up. So I showed up. I studied people, and then I knew the contracts up one side and down the other. Whatever your tool is, if you're a real estate investor, if you're a real estate agent, know your contracts word for word and study them. I think I spent those first 2 years, every time an issue would come up with a contract, I would isolate that issue contractually, and I would research it to death. I would know all the gray area, I would know all the facts. And every time an issue came up, I studied it like crazy. And so now I know the contract. I know how to relate to people, and I showed up every day. And like my coach told me, she said, it's easy to be better because everybody's just mediocre. So if you just do those little extra things, you're going to be better. And that's what helped me make my money. That's what helped me with my success. So, and to answer the next question, how I used it in DISC. How I use DISC in my business. So Abelson, they're a company that can provide the DISC. You got to pay them though. And then there's obviously Anthony Robbins has the free DISC assessment. You can use that. There's a link for it online. You go to free DISC assessment, Anthony Robbins. And so what I started doing, I started asking people questions about who they are, what their likes are, in order to get an idea of what their DISC was, so I could relate to them. So those high Ds, we can go right into DISC and how I used the DISC. That's the next section here. How I used the DISC. So when I met a high D like Steven, his biggest fear is wasting his time, because he's a high D, and high Ds, they don't want their time wasted. So when somebody would call me and they'd say, how much is the house? And I'd ask them another question. I'd slow it down just to see their reaction. And high Ds hate slow. So I'd say, oh, I guess you're going to be looking at, I don't have time for it. Okay, now I know who I'm dealing with. So I'd say, how much is the house? $228. What else you want to know? And instantly they can feel that. They can feel that. Okay, this guy's not going to waste my time. I can show you the house. You want to see it? Instantly. I'm not going to waste your time. And so I developed rapport with them. And with that D, they're very dominant, decisive, direct, and that's how you know you're talking to a D, because they're going to be that way towards you. And if you get offended, like I used to be, intimidated, sitting there with Steven, I'd be intimidated because he'd just be talking. He's like, here's what you need to do. I'd be like, okay, just tell me.
You know, Jason, I have a question for you. I know that you are, when I first met you, you are extreme high C, like analysis paralysis. And,
yeah.
And, you know, like you said, like, I didn't mean to intimidate you, which I've learned through some friends that polarizing or being abrupt. How did you overcome?
Great question. Yeah.
Being a C? Like you used to tell me these stories of it immobilized you. Like you didn't, like, you know, when you finally figured out what you were and how, you know, how strong of a C you were, how did you overcome that? Because you have to overcome.
Yeah, that's part of my story. So when I learned about the DISC and I knew I had to relate to people with these different personalities, the first thing I did, I started, rehearsing 30 minutes a day for 2 years straight. I wanted to relate to high I's. So who signed up to be a wedding DJ? Who went to Steven's company's training that he said I was doing? Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, right?
I forgot about that. Yeah, my whole goal was to turn people out and make them I's. That was one of my hardest trainings, is to convince people to be an I. I mean, we should have an I school.
With that switch. So yeah, I found a coach who was super high I. We were sitting in Panera. I said, I just want to learn how to be a high I. I want to look like you. And he could talk to anybody. To people sitting next to us, I'm like, oh God, you're talking to them. They might not like us. So I wanted to learn to be at high I. So I found a coach, and his name is John Wolf. I wanted him to teach me to be high I. So we're sitting there at Panera, and he said, Jason, you're going to do whatever I tell you to do, right? I said, absolutely. That's why I have you here. He's like, all right, 2 booths behind you. There's a guy in a plaid shirt. Look now. And I looked. He goes, you see him? I said, yeah, I see him. And he said, you're going to go talk to him. I said, I'm going to what? He goes, yeah, you're going to go talk to him. I said, what do I say? He said, well, if you can't think anything, just stop and say, you look like somebody I know. And that's if you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. But come up with something. And he walked away. And it was that moment that I thought, okay, I need to figure out a way to trigger myself to do something when I decide I'm going to do it. And I pictured a light switch. I remember picturing a light switch. The light's off. As soon as I flip that switch, the decision maker in me is gone. As soon as I flip that switch, I've got to take action. And so now I'm the performer. The decision maker goes off, performer goes on. And I pictured that light switch. I flipped the switch, and I got up, and I walked right by him. Went to the bathroom, wiped my forehead, and I came back, and I said, hey, you look like somebody I know. And they said, really? I said, where are you from? The guy was from Weatherford, like 45 minutes away. And he was just in town visiting with his brother. I had a great conversation. We talked for like 20 minutes. And I sat down, and I was exhausted. That wore me out. But I did it. And that's something that I learned is I've got to flip the switch, just like studying to be a wedding DJ. Flip the switch. With the high D, I had to find more high Ds in my life. My mentor, Tom Pace, he was a high DC. And it's like getting kicked in the gut every day. Getting asked questions, being around Steven. He's very high DI, you know, and he just comes down. He's like, this is what you should do. There's no other way. And I'm like, okay. So being around those people, I've learned how to make decisions. One of the tools that I use to make those decisions is with my wife in the car to dinner. And I'd say, I don't know, where do you want to go? And in CSC fashion, she would say, I don't know. You decide. And then I'd say, you know the game, right? So I remember Steven, we were sitting there in a truck. I was riding with him to go look at a house. And we come to a school zone, and it's one lane. Cars parked on either side. There's no way to get through except one car. And we go down that road. There was another car turning the corner coming towards us. And they hesitated for a second, and Steven said, here we go. And he just drove straight at them, and they got out of the way. And I thought, that's what I need to do, be able to make those decisions in a split second and just get what I want. And it's not selfish. It's making a decision. People need decisions made for them.
That's
because
right. Come on.
the majority of the people, they want to be employees, they want to be followers, and they need somebody to make those decisions for them, somebody who's confident, somebody who's knowledgeable. I know that I'm the best realtor for anybody out there. And if I don't make those decisions quickly, I'm going to come across as indecisive. So here we go. I'm going to tap into my D, and I'm going to make decisions. My wife says, where do you want to go to dinner? And I say, let's go to Red Lobster. Well, I don't want to go to Red Lobster. Macaroni Grill. No, I don't want to go to Macaroni Grill. Let's go to Ted's Mexican restaurant. No. And then finally we get to us. Okay, that's where we're going. And we just go. Sometimes I say, she says, where are we going to dinner? I said, I'm surprising you. Let's go. And we get in the car. I tap into my inner Steven, and I just make the decision, and I do it. So when I get home, I learned if I'm going to practice my high I, somebody who's an influencer, Ellen DeGeneres, Oprah Winfrey, those are high I's, right? Who's a D in life? Donald Trump. He's a D. Nobody likes him. You know, the guy comes across as a dick, you know. It's just, that's what D's do, because they make decisions over people, and they don't come across as considerate most of the time because they're busy making decisions. So I tap into my high I get home, and I learned I need to be that energetic person. One of my coaches, real estate coaches, he said, Jason, when I got home, I was on the phone, and all my kids would see is this. I'm on the phone. Here we go. I'm on the phone. They would just see that finger. And he goes, Jason, if I'm on the phone, I drive around the neighborhood because I want the first thing my kids to see is energy. My energy is who they see is that high I. So I get in the house, I throw my kids around, I bounce them off the bed, you know, and I practice that high I, life of the party. And that helps me with my energy. It's a choice. So that S, how did I learn how to be an S? I learned how to be empathetic, because those S's, they're safe, secure. I think of a librarian. When I walk up to a librarian, I'm going to say, excuse me, can I get some help finding a book? And I put my hand over my heart because that's safe. And I lower my tone, and I slow my voice down, because that's who they need to see. They need to see that person who's safe, steady, secure, stable. They need to see that. So that's who I am for them. And then the C, I had to even practice that, because all of this has to be on purpose if I'm going to develop rapport. And somebody said, Jason, are you afraid you're going to sound too scripted? And I said, no. Why would I ever be afraid to sound too scripted for people that I care about? I mean, I practice scripts with my wife, for my wife, because I love her and I don't want any miscommunication. I want to speak her language. Yes, I tell her who I am. I tell her everything I'm feeling and thinking, but I want to relate to her, so I know what to say when she says something. That's so important, let alone people I haven't even met before that I need to help. They'd have a family crisis, whatever. If I can't develop rapport with them, they're going to end up with somebody who can do them harm. And that's a disservice on my part. So I take it personally. That C, when that C calls me up, they're asking about a house or they're asking about real estate. The houses are easy. So they call and ask about a house. So they give me a whole bunch of details. That's how I know they're a C. They give me a whole bunch of details. It's like, hey, I checked into this house. I found out it's like 1,200 square feet. And it looks like it has 3 bedrooms. And I looked at the driveway. It's concrete, which is what I want. And so they're giving me all these details, and I know I'm feeling kind of bored. So that's when I know this is probably a C, because they're boring me. So they give me a chance to talk, and what do? I tell them everything I know. I'm like, yeah, it's a 3-bed. The roof is composition shingles, and they painted the front door last week, and they just mowed the lawn, and it's got a concrete drive, and it's got brand new window, and I just monotone, and I just go on and on and on, and I know I'm for sure talking to a C when there's dead air on the other end, and they're waiting for more information, because they can never get too much information. So I practice that, being that C. We would do it in scripts practice every day for 30 minutes a day for 2 years with other realtors. I was in there, and we practiced the disc, and we'd ask each other questions, and I'd ring up on the phone and be in the high D, how much is the house? And they'd get all scared, and then we work through, okay, this is how you handle that. Why, you want to see it? Yeah. And you just act like that D, or the C or the S, and it really, it hasn't failed me, understanding those personalities. It's been big. So that's how I use the disc to help. every day in my business and in my family, in my personal life.
Yeah. So what questions do you ask, or what like, you said something about the square footage. I thought that's very interesting. I was probably a real estate investor for at least 5 years or longer, and I never calculated square footage. It was always beds versus baths and value, right? Because I'm a DI or a D. But it's funny that later, when I became a sophisticated investor, we measure everything with square footage. I think that's a very powerful way to distinguish what personality type that individual is that you're working with, about the square footage. Because I'll hear investors say, yeah, that's $80 a square foot, or that's $120 a square foot, which is a good, barometer, but it also speaks to their personality. What other triggers do you see with DISC personalities? Like, give me another example. Like, if
Yeah, one of my first experiences, I went on a listing consultation. It was a referral from somebody I knew in the printing business, and her brother was going to be there to help me, or to hear me out as far as why I needed to list his house. And this was probably a $7,000 commission for me. And so I talked to him on the phone, and I misread him. I thought he was a C. I thought he was high details. So I had my folder all ready. I had every sheet all organized. I had it bound. I was details. Worst thing you can ever do for a high C is have your paperwork a mess in front of them. If you're working with a high C, jog it down, keep it straight, organized. I treat everybody like that because they might be. So I go to the listing consultation. I walk in the house. I'm standing there talking to the sister, and the brother gets there. I go to the front door with her, and I reach out to shake his hand. He just walks right by me. Didn't even stop or acknowledge me. I'm like, oh, that was odd. If this guy's a high C, would he not be trying to give me details and get more details out of me? So we go, and I'm laying this out, and he's yawning while I'm giving him the whole spiel. He calls me 2 days later. We want somebody else, Jason. Sorry, you don't get $7,000. We want somebody else. It just seemed like you were too canned, like you were too scripted. And I realized the guy was a high D. He just blew right by me. So that's how I know somebody. Like if I walk in a house with two people and one of them stops to engage and the other one just shoots off into the house, they're either a C or a D when they shoot off into the house. If they stop to engage me, they could be a high I, an S, a C. Ds rarely do that. They just blow right into the house, and they know what they're looking for. So the things I say to them, oh, you must know what you're looking for. I love being around people that don't waste my time, right? And I just speak their language. Last thing I want to do is waste your time. Thanks for knowing what you want. Right?
This is awesome. I love this data. Okay, how about high I's? You're showing a house to a high I. What do you say to that person?
I'm going to have my hand on their shoulder, and I'm going to say, don't you just love this house? Think about your family in the house. I mean, so many good things, and I want to get to know them. So what do you do for a living? I'm just talking to them about nothing. And they eat it up because they just talk and talk. They want my approval.
Yes.
The worst thing you can do for an I is disapproval. Oh my gosh, they want your approval so bad. So I talk to them and engage them, and I pick my energy up, because if I'm like, yeah, I really want to show you the house. It's a really good house. We've got a bathroom over here. They get bored, and their mind wanders, and they're already off to the next thing. They're looking for engagement, connection. That's what they want. And if you miss that, you're out. They're gonna find somebody who meets that need, that they can feed off of their energy. You gotta keep the energy high.
And they feel comfortable with that person because they're reciprocating the DISC to them, if they're high I.
Mm-hmm.
How about someone that rolls up to a property that has a clipboard and a pen? What does that translate to you?
D or a C, probably a C. If they have a clipboard and a pen, probably a D or a C, more likely a C, because they'll walk up, and usually I look at their clipboard and they have notes. They have cost comparisons. That's what I've seen. Cost comparisons. They have a breakdown from one house to the next. They have a list of addresses, and they're all organized. And it's like that every time. They have a clipboard. They're just going through their notes. They're a high C, more than likely. Sometimes Ds, but rarely. It's more likely.
Dude, you're right on, because I want to have a clipboard because I don't want to, because I forget things because I'm driving through like a D. Oh yeah, I forgot to check the roof. Oh yeah, where's the water heater? That's why I like the clipboard. But when I'm on a property, is that you? That's funny. But then when I teach, when I do my bus tour, everybody has a clipboard, and everybody's trying to get, trying to be a C at that moment. What other how did you tell us about a success that you feel like using through DISC? You learned from that $7,000 IP guy. I remember that call. I called you at the right time. I'm like, how are you doing? And you were like broken on the phone. I just lost a sale because that guy was a D. And I'm like, I'm a D. I'm like, you sell me, you sell my property. You know how to work with me. I'm not easy to work with. And so flip the script. Tell us a story where it really worked. Like, drop shipping them a RC car.
Well, that comes into love languages. You really want to get into the next level. You understand the 5 love languages. That's a big deal because Steven's all about gifts. So you get a referral, guy gets an RC car.
Yeah, let me tell you the story. So one day I get this Amazon box on my doorstep, and I'm like, what is this? And I open it up, and it's an RC car, and I was like, oh my gosh! And there's a letter in there that says, thanks for giving me a referral, Jason G. And I was like, since that day forward, I try to drop gifts on people like crazy. I did a podcast on it not too long ago with another guy that does it religiously, like trying to find, like Tiffany glasses he ships people. Yeah. I think that is, I'm telling you, man, that has been a deal changer for me because I'm kind of thrifty, and I'm like, I'm trying to maximize my return all the time. But I learned from Eric Thomas where he's like, you need to upgrade your friends. And I'm like, Eric, how do you upgrade your friends, right? You have a standard. And I noticed at one time before there's only 2 times that people just wowed me with just a generosity. And I remember this guy that was one of my clients back in the bridal business. And then for my wedding, he showed up with this very expensive wedding gift. And I was like, whoa, what does this mean? I wouldn't have given this. Does he really like me? I don't like him. I mean, is my affection for him as strong as this $200 gift? And I realized through that process is sometimes you have to upgrade people. You're just going to have to just bless people and breathe life into them, that you are a person of generosity, a person of success, a person that wants to grow the person.
Here's the deal. Scarcity versus abundance. If you're coming from scarcity, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough this, I don't have enough that. First of all, go get some more sales. Second of all, start giving even when it hurts. Because if you're coming from scarcity, you're trying to hold on to everything, and you put your hand in a fist, right? And somebody wants to hand you $100. How are you going to accept it? You can't. You got to open your hand. So scarcity versus abundance. You've got to believe that's going to happen. You're putting in the work. You're putting in the time. You send a gift, a $250 RC car. That hurts, but it's a good friend. Somebody's giving you more, whatever. You drop it on them.
It's huge, though. I mean, telling Jason, every time I touch an RC car, I think of you, and I think that's the best thing I've ever. I mean, and I try to emulate that all the time, like giving people very strategic gifts so they would never forget me as a business person or a company, and just overly give to them. I mean, to this day, I still use that as an example when I'm coaching people. Someone's trying to get in front of a CEO, or someone's trying to build a relationship with someone. I try to, in this rough market of trying to get more leads or work with certain wholesalers, how can you differentiate yourself? How can you position yourself to be the man, the woman that's impactful? And I still remember that gift forever. I mean, I did it. I used it on somebody else. The exact same gift that you gave me. I gifted a RC car to an investor that helped me, saved me $2,000 on a roof. I needed a roof, and he had a roof crew, and he just did me a solid. I shipped him, and I could see him later. He brought the car over to my house and played with me. I mean, like I could have scripted that, and that's a lot of from your leadership of that. What other success did you tell us the success of using DISC?
My two ladies, I was called over to their house. Their parents built the house. They had passed away, and these two sisters, they were in their 60s. They needed to sell the house, and the older sister, she was a high C. I spent 3 hours sitting with her, just talking to her details. She wanted to know every detail until she felt comfortable. The other sister, she was probably an SI combination, and she's a filler, She was sitting on the end of the couch. We were walking through the house with the detail sister. The other sister was sitting on the couch crying because of all the memories. So when I tapped into high C, talking to the one sister, shifting back to caring and empathetic with the other sister, they felt comfortable. They said they had 5 other realtors that they met with, and they hired me because they felt most comfortable with me, because I put in the time, first of all. Second of all, I knew how to relate to them.
That's why I'm not a real estate agent. I can't talk to somebody for 3 hours. It's true. Like there's some very good wholesalers, and they'll sit there, and I just get nervous talking to somebody for so long because they're going to choose some other wholesaler that looks differently, looks better, because that's just my scarcity insecurity.
That's your deal. You're afraid of them wasting your time.
Well, I know, and I've seen, like, I'll compare myself to a wholesaler that's just getting a ton of deals, and what's so special about this guy? What's so special? And I'm trying to figure this dude out. I'm like, I don't want to get into, but I realize he just sits there and listens to them and hears their problems and is empathetic to them. I'm like, I'm empathetic too, girl. I'm going to solve your problem. Like, but the reality is, it's this. You got to focus. I'm telling you, I think the success of my marriage, the success of business is all about DISC, because you really got to, it's trying to be unselfish. I'm selfish. I'm a D. I want to get it done. But this person really needs to understand the C's. They really need to understand the details. And you have to step into that role.
Yeah. My mentor, the fastest closing I've ever had on a real estate property was 7 minutes. My mentor, Tom Pace, he calls me up and he said, Jason, I have flowers in the car and I don't want them to wilt. He said, I want to come in. You're going to hand me a Diet Coke. I'm going to sign the paperwork and I need to be back in the car because I don't want those flowers to wilt. I said, yes, sir. So I got with the title, the closer, and I said, hey, we don't have long. We need to close this deal. I said, it needs to be ready. He's going to come in and sign, and then he's out. She's like, all right. She had it all ready. He walked in. I handed him a Diet Coke with a napkin around it. He went in, signed. I didn't want his hands to get wet. Signs the paperwork. 7 minutes. He was in and out, gone. And I waited for his paperwork. I delivered his paperwork with the key to the house after everything was done. He's a D. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's all. I mean, I think it's really commendable, man, that you're just willing to recognize that and then fulfill that. I mean, I think that's success, man. I mean, I think you're one of the most successful people on the planet in my mind. I mean, people are willing to study, and I know I don't want to keep touching because, like, Jason, explain where you were as a high C and you were a salesperson, at your printing job for 16 years, which you were just an order taker, not to desensitize what you were doing.
In-house sales.
And now you have to make calls. You have to change brokerages and recruit people. I mean, overcoming, I think, analysis paralysis is what people really need to learn. Do you have any way to overcome being a C, or just this to flip the switch? Is that your ultimate, like, psych yourself up?
I have to be able to flip the switch. The faster I flip the switch, if it takes me 24 hours to be the high I first flip the switch, and that's why I practice so much, so I can be a different person on a dime. And as soon as I realize somebody needs me and they want to relate to me, how do we do that? They're not going to try to be Jason G in their head. I've got to learn to be them in my head so I can relate to them.
Nice.
And once we relate to them, we got the trust, and then we can go from there. But And that's why I practice so much, because I have to be able to do that. I can't just be Jason G to everybody, because not everybody wants that or needs that.
That's awesome. It's extremely powerful. All right, ladies and gents, any questions for my superstar successful person here? Don't be shy. Lee's coming on.
Hey, Jason.
Or
Yeah.
Ryan.
Man, first I just want to say I can really relate to your story as a high C person also, and I'm working really hard to try to relate with other people. One thing I'm kind of curious about, when you say you did like 30 minutes of practice every day, like can you just give me a rundown? Like, what does that look like to you? What is 30 minutes a day of just studying any type of role playing? Like, what is it by yourself? Are you with your wife? Do you do that a lot with your family? I try. I have 6-year-old twin girls. I try really hard to just be there for them and try to, because they're different from me. They're different from each other, but they're definitely different from me. And trying to understand their personalities is like the best test subjects and the best way to practice, I think. But what does that look like to you?
It looks like, to me, I'm a real estate agent, so I found another real estate agent to practice with, and I made a commitment. I'm going to show up for 30 days, and we're going to practice. We're going to role play the different personality types for 30 days. If I miss one day or I'm late by 1 minute, I'm going to eat a spoonful of Alpo dog food, the gravy kind that tastes like liquid cardboard. I'm committed if I'm late, because that stuff's gross. So I had a big enough reason why, and I had a consequence if I didn't show up. So it's very important to have a consequence and have a big enough reason why. I have four kids and a wife at home, and if I didn't show up, I'm eating Alpo. So I was there every day for 30 days. Then I made another commitment. I'm going to do another 30 days. Eventually, that guy dropped off, but I already had 2 or 3 other people that were showing up every day, other realtors that I'd recruited. What do you do for a living?
I'm also an investor, and I do handyman work as a supplement to that.
You get with other investors, and you practice objections, and you look at how you invest and the people that you talk to on a daily basis, so you're never surprised. You can't have too many details, right? So you've got to be able to switch out of that and be able to ask the right questions and relate to other people. So you're going to practice, you're going to switch into that D role in your mind, and you're just going to try to be a jerk to somebody, right? They're not jerks. That's just how they come across sometimes. So it could be on the phone, and you just say with your practice partner, you call them up and you say, hey, how much is the house? Or I want to sell my house. How much can you give me for it? And just be short and direct. Practice being that D, and then they've got to answer the question. And then you give them some objections, you go back and forth a little bit, and then you break it down and talk about it. How could I have handled that better? And it grows from there. You go online, get some resources. Find out all the personality traits for each of the DISC personalities. Study them, and then practice those on other people. I practice being those people to my wife, the different people, the D, the I, the SC. I practice that on my kids. And most importantly, I had people to practice with at the office for 30 minutes every day. If nobody showed up, I was practicing by myself. I got to where I had anywhere from 10 to 15 people every day coming to practice the scripts, objection handlers, DISC. And once you go through them and you get it internalized, man, it's a game changer, because you're not just that, I just got to get details. How do I get more details out of you? The way to do that is rapport. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Yeah. Hey, I really appreciate you being here today, Jason.
Yeah, my pleasure, for sure.
Okay, who else?
All right, so as far as like a quick evaluation of somebody to see what category they fall in, you mainly just ask like certain questions to see what triggers, or do you kind of just let them talk and see where they come from to determine if they'll just give you that information, or just getting a little more rundown on that part? Yeah,
all the calls are different, but yet they're the same, because they're going to ask you a question. So you listen to their rate of speech. Somebody who's an S, they're going to be like, yeah, I'm calling on the house, and they're going to be insecure. That's probably an S. So you can slow it down. Just mirror and match for the most part. And then you can once you learn the profiles of the four personalities, then you can be quick to come back with this is what we're going to do, or and relate to them, or you give them details, or you're the life of the party. You just practice that. But you're going to hear it in their voice, first of all, and then the type of question they ask. And that's how you pick up on it right away. You learn to recognize it fast.
Do you also run and talk to strangers in the restaurant now, or do you leave that part out?
I turn on my D, because I've adopted I don't like my time being wasted. So I've adopted that. I hate standing in line now because I've practiced it so much. I don't like standing in line, and you're going to talk to me, have a purpose. Let's get to the point. Let's do it. So now I'm probably a little more impatient, but when I need to get what I want, get a table, get a waiter or waitress, I need somebody to move their chair, whatever it is, I can turn that on. But when I act outside of my personality, when I'm using those scripts like a high I, I'm not the high I, it wears me out. I got to take a nap later. Like I'll take a nap after we get done here, because it's not my natural. I have to flex. They call that flexing. When I have to act outside of my personality trait, it's flexing, and flexing takes energy because I'm not doing it naturally.
Cool. It's awesome. Was it hard for you to accept this engagement today as a C?
I flipped the switch and I just did it. I've learned when somebody gives me an opportunity and I trust the person, they give me an opportunity and it's something I'm interested in, bam, I flip that switch in my mind. You remember the response for the text that said, thank you, I'm honored, I'm in, right? Instantly, I flipped that switch, let's do it. I felt the fear. And I felt not wanting to do it, but I pictured the light switch in my head, flipped it, and I responded to you. Because once I responded to you, the decision maker is out of the picture.
Now
the action taker has to take over.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just put yourself in a position to perform. Would you agree with that? I mean, even though you don't know the results and the burning of the bridge.
Yeah, I learned that when I jumped into real estate. 4 kids at home and a wife, $28,000 in the bank. Enough to live on for a year, and then I almost ran out of money. I put myself in that position, and I came through. So I learned I got to put myself in that position even when I don't feel like it. And I can do that on purpose. Most people, they live on default. They go on default their entire life, getting into those positions, trying to avoid those positions, where we can put ourselves into those positions on purpose, have some control, put ourselves into those positions, and trust ourselves to succeed. We can do it on purpose.
So when you got your savings and you got this all geared up, I mean, I know you must have had some fear, and then 6 months it didn't go as planned. How did you pivot or deal with it?
I buckled down, spent more time working, calling. I was on the phone, reaching out to anybody and everybody. You picture a 6-year-old little boy in a dry riverbed, right? What's in the dry riverbed? Rocks. Right? What does a 6-year-old boy do in a dry riverbed full of rocks? He turns them over, one rock after another, to see what's underneath, and he's going to be rewarded. Every once in a while, there's going to be something under there. So he doesn't turn over the first one and find nothing and go away. No, he turns over another one and finds something cool. So then he's like, hey, I'm going to turn over another one, and he might go through 10 rocks, and eventually he's going to find another one. So he's turning over rock after rock after rock, finding the cool stuff. And that's what I learned. You just got to turn over rocks every day. And that's what I realized. I've got to turn over rocks, or my family's going to suffer.
Now, the process that you've gone through and the success, would you have done anything differently, or would you have done something even more of? And I know that your life is changing right now, because we had an awesome conversation yesterday of not working as much. But the last 4 years, would you have changed anything in that process? Would you have had more savings lined out? Would you, maybe have goals written down a little bit tighter? Or tell me, what advice would you have given yourself, knowing that you were going to go into war and battle, basically, is what you did?
I had all the right people around me. There's never a right time to do it. And the only thing that I would have changed, I would have left my job sooner. I gave him a month part-time, and it was the most miserable time of my life at that job because there was no direction. My brother-in-law hated me by the time I left. Now he's my biggest supporter, by the way. By the time I left, he hated me because I was only part-time, and my other career was the full-time deal now, and I gave him a month. I would have given him 2 weeks. That's what I would change. 2 weeks and I'm out.
One follow-up.
Yeah.
I was going to say one follow-up question. Dealing with like the combinations of homeowners that you have, is there a certain trait of the disc that stands out more predominantly when dealing with real estate? Or is it just kind of a mixture of everything? So like if you're talking to a couple that is a D and a C, does a D generally take over like the conversation with you, or would it be the C?
Yeah, a couple of questions there. You'll see the dynamic in people. You see it every day. You just haven't put labels on it, I'm sure. But you'll see people interact. The majority of the people out there are S's or SCs, a combination of that, probably 60% of the people. There's a lot fewer Ds. And there's fewer more I's than there are D's. But that's what I've seen. So when I come across a D, I recognize it right away, but the majority of the people are like SC type people, and they want their followers. They want to be employees. They need somebody to lead them and somebody they can trust. Those are the majority of the people out there. Real estate agents, by the way, their majority of them are high I's or IDs. Very few SCs in real estate. Because it's geared towards sales and self-employment, and those SCs are really insecure in that position. Not that they can't do it, obviously, but
well said.
Yeah.
And to have a successful team, at one time you had 8 employees rolling. You had this massive operation. What was the makeup of your teams, and what positions were they? And did you sort them out on their personality trait?
Yeah, they always get the disc. Then I had through Keller Williams, I had another personality. It's even more in depth. I walk them through their future self. I have a system that I use for that. Their present self, their past. So I really get to know them. It's probably a 20 to 30 day process before I hire somebody. And at the very base of that is the disc. I want to know their disc. Then I want to know what their life is like. And so it's a very detailed process. I've had salespeople work for me, assistants, transaction coordinators, and a stager, photographers. So I've seen quite a bit of it.
That's awesome. Well, Jason, our time is up. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Savvy Radio Show. Glide online and listen to our other motivating episodes at savvyradioshow.com. Connect on Twitter at LandlordBook and always be buying assets.